fellow commissioner of mine, and we got a special show for you today because we're going to talk a little bit about the Tennessee Titans, guys. Big week, Drew, this week. Coach Mike Vrabel out in Tennessee.
Well, it came as a shock, I think, for a lot of people. I think that there was a lot of talk all year about potentially trading him, but I guess Amy Adams Strunk chose that to go the route of just going ahead and letting him go, so then that way they can kind of go out and find the guy that they want to find. So,
well, Coach Vrabel, go through his record. Good, obviously good coach, really good coach. In 2018, they were 9-7. 2019, 9-7, made the nice run of the AFC title game, went 2-1 in the playoffs. 2020, 11-5, 0-1 in the playoffs. 2021, he's NFL Coach of the Year at 12-5. And then the A.J. Brown, blah, 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 the wheels fell off, 7-10, 6-11. His coaching record's 54-45, and he's 2-3 in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, nobody can deny he's a good football coach.
Absolutely.
I think the problem is, I think it goes deeper into away from the field that I think is what kind of started a lot of this. I think there was some friction behind the scenes, and I think that there was also just some concerns, and it all kind of goes back to draft night with A.J. Brown, and I think that was kind of the start of the downhill.
I will say Vrabel looked totally shocked when A.J. Brown was traded in the draft room anyway. Whether he was or not, I don't know. Of course, John Robinson was removed in 2022, and since then the problem you have is you've gone 6-24. Since Robinson was let go.
Yeah, I mean, the Titans have not looked good in 2 years. They've just not looked like a complete team. They've struggled on the offensive line for 2 years. They've struggled at the receiver position. And I think going into this year, I think there were some demands made from Amy Adams Strunk to fix that offensive line. And I don't think that it was fixed. I think they kind of struck out on some players that I think.
And I think when you go and get your offensive line coach, and he's the O-line coach at Colgate, that didn't leave much. And that, I think that was part of Vrabel's problem. He hired his buddies and his friends as coordinators and not necessarily went out and got the best coaches.
Well, he hired a lot of his guys from the staff.
Yeah.
So he would hire, when the special teams coordinator got fired, he hired the assistant special teams coordinator. When he fired the offensive line coach, he hired the assistant offensive line coach. And I just think that what happens is these coaches, they're so loyal to their staff that sometimes it's to their demise, because there are better offensive line coaches out there, and
some aren't. Look what Jacksonville did. I mean, the Jacksonville coach loses to the Titans and removes his defensive coordinator, removes his running back coach, and several others. But there is an article that viewers can look at, because the national media, I think, is beating up on the owner pretty good. But Titans Wire, it's on Titans Wires. I got to Google it up. It's on USA Today, and it talks about what happened here. And I'm just going to do the highlighted portion here. But during the hiring process of general manager John Robinson, who was fired by Strunk late last season, Vrabel made 2 comments to Strunk that caused friction between them. Vrabel wanted full control over the roster, saying that he'd earned it, and Strunk pointedly disagreed. She had carried a belief over the years that head coaches should not have full control, pointing out, and this is a key, the way things went for the Tennessee Titans in the latter year of Jeff Fisher, when he ran Floyd Reese off, and stuff really, when Fisher was calling the shots, went downhill for the Titans. And she also said, watching from afar, the issues that transpired with the Patriots, with Bill Belichick, as we saw today, he was removed, and with Bill O'Brien with the Texans, who really set the Texans back. And I think that's a pretty good point.
Well, and I'm going to tell you, I've been very impressed since Amy Adams Strunk has stepped up as the main voice of that family, because she seems to have a good grip on leadership and management. Now, that seems to be her kind of focus. And I think she saw that if one person had all that control, that you don't have any checks and balances. And I think that most NFL teams are set up to have director of football operations, a general manager, and a head coach, all handling different pieces of the organization.
And I think another key here, too, was there was some more friction that came when Vrabel went up to the Patriots Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And this is what he said during his speech. He said, I do not want all of you all to take this great organization for granted. I've been a lot of places. It's a special place with great leadership, great fans, great direction, great coaching. Enjoy it. It's not like that anymore. And I think that rubs some feathers wrong.
Well, I think
the communication obviously wasn't there.
Well, absolutely. I don't think he communicated that he was even going.
Right.
And then once he got there, made those comments. And I think that kind of took a lot of people a little off guard. And I think if I'm the owner of the Titans and that statement comes out, I'm probably pretty, fired up about it. But I think that was overcomable.
Yes.
Or I think that was something that they could have got together and got behind a room.
Right.
The problem is I think when they did that, I think more demands came out.
I think so too.
And I think that Vrabel, while a good coach, I think when you kind of get a little bit too big for yourself, you start to see the demise. Just like Bill Belichick in New England, when he started to take over the roster, he started to take over the majority of control, and I think you've seen that in several places. And so, this is an interesting situation for the Titans. This is going to be one that I think that's going to be a crucial hire. They've got to hire the right person. I think they're bringing in a ton of people to interview.
I like to widen out their cast. And I'm going to bring up two other coaches that did the same thing with power struggles. It happened with the Miami Dolphins twice with Bill Parcells, and it also happened with Jimmy Johnson. They gave the coach complete control, and it did not work out well. In any case, name me a case where the coach controlling things has worked anywhere.
It's just the way the NFL is designed with the contract negotiations, with the wide net you have to throw.
With drafting even.
Absolutely. Because it goes so much deeper. I mean, look at the Titans. I mean, they drafted a kid out of UT Martin this year. The head coach, do you think Vrabel knew who that kid was prior to the draft?
That's why I have scouting.
That's why you have scouts. That's why you have a general manager. And so the thing is the coach needs to focus on the X's and O's and bringing in quality staff. That's where I think Vrabel made some missteps.
I agree 100%. I think that was the problem, was the staff. And then when the staff didn't work, the non-willingness to make a move to make the change.
It's a story we've heard over and over in the NFL. Right. When they will not let go of people, then the head coach usually ends up on the street.
Well, we're going to hear from our sponsor real quick, and then we're going to move forward to who the candidates are and let everybody know. Today's show is brought to you by Shelbyville Animal Hospital, 628 North Main Street, right here in Shelbyville. Dr. Andrea Anderson. I think I might be married to her. And Dr. Stephen Stimson are your doctors down there. And it's 931-684-8088. And kind of like Ricky Epperson, if you get really lucky, you might catch my daughter in there, Julia, about 3 days a week when she's not in MTSU. All right, let's talk now, guys, real quick. Let's talk about the list of names that they've asked to interview. And we'll start with, I'm going to put him number one. Bobby Slowick, I believe is his name. He's the Texans OC. And it's, again, my thing was, let's not get anybody from the Texans. However, he's only been there a year, but he's got ties to the 49ers, ties to Rand Carthon, and he did a really nice job with C.J. Stroud this year. I would think he's at the top of the list.
Well, C.J. Stroud, I think, is number one because we have a similar situation with Levis, having a young quarterback. But those ties to Rand being in San Francisco, I mean, he was the passing game coordinator for 2 seasons with Rand. He was there for a total of 4 seasons with him. So, not to mention he had a 1,000-yard receiver, and Tank Dell, if he didn't get hurt, was fixing to be the second guy that had 1,000 yards. So I think he has a very creative offense. One of the things you'll hear through this process is going to be hearing, especially on the offensive coordinators that they're looking at, who knows spacing, who can get players the ball in space. And that is where I think that the Texans offense coordinator, he's very good at that. I think that is a big reason why you saw a big jump in the offensive statistics. The other thing is everything I've heard from D'Amico Ryans is he did all the right things this year. And so who is his right man was this guy from offense coordinator, Bobby Slowick.
And could a coordinator like that you're talking about, it was spacing, and David Thomas may throw something at me here in a minute. But Traylon Burks given a little coaching, and maybe he's got to stay on the field. But obviously the kid's got talent. Kyle Phillips has obviously got talent. I think maybe with a little more creative offense, we've got some receivers that look a whole lot better in a scheme where you're getting them in space.
I look at Traylon Burks very similar in the talent of a Deebo Samuel. He's very structured the same.
Right.
Arkansas used him like that. When they played Alabama his senior year, he had about 200 yards receiving and about 20 or 30 yards rushing and some screen passes and really utilized him. Well, the problem is we haven't had an offense coordinator at Tennessee that even has any player in that role. And so having a guy who is tied to San Francisco it's attractive because I think they have the most dynamic offense, probably first or second to Miami. I think those are really the two most dynamic offenses, and this guy was right in the mix, right in the middle of them last year. So I think he's a positive candidate. I'm a little nervous about his age.
Right.
He's a younger coach.
He's only like 36, 37.
Yep. And so he's really only been a coordinator for a couple years. So, I think he's a good candidate. But with head coach, the jump from offense coordinator to head coach, you're now not only just dealing with these meeting rooms, now you're dealing with all the meeting rooms. You're dealing with the general manager, you're dealing with the owner, you're dealing with the media every day. So because of that, all of these individuals that they're interviewing, it's all a huge jump. So we'll see. But I think he's a quality candidate. He's probably my 1, 2, or 3. I have 3 top candidates, and he's at least in the top group.
All right. Number 2, and he's going to be the first one interviewed. He's interviewing, I believe, tomorrow, yes, Brian Callahan, which is Bill Callahan, one of the best OCs in the NFL, son. He's the OC at the Bengals. He's done a really good job with Burrow, but the job he did with Browning after Burrow got hurt was really nice.
Absolutely. I mean, Browning came in about middle of the season, and the first half of the season, Joe Burrow had about 2,300 yards. Moved the ball, was one of the dominant offenses. He went down. Everybody thought Bengals were done.
Yeah, they did.
And then a rookie, Jake Browning, comes in there. I'm sorry, not a rookie. He's a second-year player. Jake Browning had 1,900 yards the rest of the way. And I will tell you that last game of the season, the best coordinated job on offense all year was what he did with Jake Browning. And so, I mean,
again, he's young.
He's young.
The one thing about him that I'm attracted to is I'm assuming his father would come right over and coach offensive line. And buddy, the Titans could use an offensive line coach.
That's a big plus to this. I mean, not to mention his offense also put out a 1,000-yard rusher in Mixon, a 1,200-yard receiver in Chase, and an 800-yard receiver in Higgins. And don't forget, Higgins is a free agent.
And if Higgins had not missed a couple games, he'd have been over 1,000.
Oh, absolutely.
The number 3 one is Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator for the Lions. He's hot in demand right now. Thoughts on him?
He's my favorite.
Okay.
I've watched a lot of videos of him at camps and through the draft process. He seems to be a player coach. Now the thing is,
he makes Jared Goff look like a Pro Bowler.
Yeah, Jared Goff, I mean,
and I just don't think he's very good. And that would really help Will Levis.
Yeah, 4,500 yards this year, 1,000 yards for David Montgomery, 1,000 yards for Jamar Gibbs, 1,000 yards for Amon St. Brown, and 900 yards at the tight end position.
Hard to argue that.
It's hard to argue. Every single player on that offense. And he took guys that the Titans couldn't do really anything with, Reynolds and Khalif Raymond. And turn them into a quality number 2 and number 3. So the reason why I like him number 1 is because I think he fits the right mentality. I don't think he has
coming from Dan Campbell. You've got to.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You're hard nosed.
And that's a great point because Dan Campbell may be the coach of the year this year. And the other thing is I don't think he's going to be in a power struggle. Right. I think he is okay coming in and just being the coach.
Number 4 on the list, I've got another OC is Mike Katka, and he's the OC with the Giants. The reason I mentioned him is I know they've asked to interview him. All these they've asked for interviews.
Yeah.
He comes from the Andy Reid tree, coached in Kansas City before he came to Dayball, and he's been around Andy Reid 4 or 5 years. And that's why I think they're interviewing him. Again, another offensive guy.
I think it's really just trying to find out exactly what's going on. Can he get some of those ideas coming from San Francisco? I think he's way down on the list. I don't think he's really an overall viable candidate, not because of the fact that he's not knowledgeable. He's just only been an OC for 1 year, and really it's been it's only probably 6 or 7 years removed since he played. So
the number 5 guy, Mike McDonald, the defensive coordinator for the Ravens, got the experience with both Harbaughs at Michigan.
It's hard not to like him.
And he's a pretty good guy.
Best defense in the league.
Yep.
He's been at the Ravens for 2 years as DC. He was at Michigan for 1 year as DC. He's been at the Ravens for forever as a linebackers coach. 13-4 this year, and I will say that's the best defense in the league. So, I mean, it's always attractive. The problem is with a young quarterback, hiring a defensive-minded coach, it scares me because if he goes out and gets a great offense coordinator, where's that guy going to be in 2 years? He's going somewhere else.
And then you start over.
Then you're starting over again. So Will Levis is so early in his.
Right.
I really am pushing for the Titans to hire an offensive mind. But these are great options on the defense.
Well, I just like it's a wide net. The sixth person I've got on the list is Antonio Pierce, who's the interim head coach for the Raiders, and that guy's done a phenomenal job. He's never been a coordinator, but the minute they fire McDaniels, this guy goes 5-4. Mm-hmm. They're winning games. They're in games. He turned them around. Well, he probably should get the Raider job, to be honest with you.
He should. We'll see. The Raiders may end up messing up again and not hiring the interim.
Right.
But I'll tell you, a lot of people don't know this. He was a head coach for 3 years at a high school in California.
I read that
at Long Beach Poly, which is a great
right
notoriety, high school all across the country. Everybody knows a lot of great athletes come out of there. He was a head coach there for 3 years. And then he was for 4 years the associate head coach under Herm Edwards.
I did not know
at
that.
Arizona State.
Didn't read that one.
And so the thing is, he comes from a good pedigree, not to mention he's a fiery guy.
So and a former player and a very good one.
Well, a lot of people didn't know this, but before the last game that they played, he actually showed up to the stadium early and went out and hung out with fans. And there were all the tailgaters,
right?
And spent time with him, high fiving and spending time. And so I do think that he is a great potential. The other question is going to be: are they bringing him in to potentially interview him for DC? That's the question. If he doesn't get one of these head coaching jobs, that'd be a pretty good defensive coordinator to match with one of these young OCs.
The other three names I'm going to mention real quick are Brian Johnson, the OC of the Eagles, Dan Quinn, DC of the Cowboys. I'm assuming when they did Pete Carroll, Dan Quinn's going to be the coach of the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think that he's the number one up there. Now the question is going to be is do they get that finalized before the Titans are able to interview him? Brian Johnson, I'm not a fan of. I think he's a big reason why the Eagles have kind of stumbled.
Right.
You take Jalen Hurts, who is a Super Bowl contending quarterback, and this year he looks like he's barely been able to move the ball. So I think now Aaron Glenn.
That's another one. I'm not a fan of that one.
Now, this is an interesting point I read today. Since the Titans have been in Tennessee, they have not had any head coaches that were not former NFL players.
Wow, so that's a good point.
That's an interesting thing. And so on the list, you got Aaron Glenn, Antonio Pierce, and Mike Kafka.
I didn't know Ken Wisdom played in the NFL.
Yep. He was a quarterback, I believe.
Well, I think one of the keys that the owner made clear here is this. She talked about in depth the staff you can bring with you. Mm-hmm. And that is a key here, no matter which one of these guys we hire, who can put together the best staff and bring it with them. Because it's not just one guy, not a head coach. It's a whole team of people. And I've got a feeling there's going to be a lot of lockers about coaches. We're not going to be keeping a bunch of coaches. I think it's going to be a clean slate.
Yeah, I think the D-line coach may hang around. I think he's been kind of an institution there. He's made it a couple coaches. He's really, really good. But other than that, I think they're going to clean house. I think that those top three for me are going to be the OC from Texans, the Bengals offense coordinator, and Ben Johnson, the offense coordinator for Lions. I think if you get one of those three and you partner them with somebody that's energetic, like a Antonio Pierce as potential.
Well, and I think with the Titans, you have so much talent on defense. A coordinator is going to be somewhat excited. You've got some players with the Titans on defense. You've got Big Jeff. You've got Landry. There's some players and something to work with there.
Yeah, I think so. And I feel like that we've got to go get a head coach that is offensive minded. So he stays the entire career, or at least the majority of the career of Will Levis.
Absolutely.
And so I think that if we didn't have a young quarterback, if we had a veteran quarterback, I think you could very easily get one of those defensive coordinators. But I definitely think if we hire one of those three, I think we made a good decision. I think if we start getting into those second tier guys, then you start questioning whether or not this is going to be beneficial.
We'll wrap this up. But hey, I got one more question for you, Drew. Where does Mike Vrabel end up? He's going to be somewhere this year. Where's it going to be?
Well, I think speculation was New England. That's the obvious. Right. But I think they got Gerard Mayo on staff. That one of those two will probably get that job. If Mike Vrabel doesn't get that job, there's some question. Maybe Washington, maybe San Diego. I don't know. But I think that
he's got a lot of ties to the Chicago Bears organization as well.
But they decided to keep their
coach.
So
far. I think they're after Harbaugh, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Hey, today's show is brought to you by Shelbyville Animal Hospital, 628 North Main Street, right here in Shelbyville. Dr. Andrea Anderson and Dr. Stephen Stimpson, 931-684-8088. Give them a call for all your cat, dog, and small pet needs. For Drew Hooker, I'm Bill Anderson. Everybody have a good evening, and let's get the right coach and hope it works.